Hi team, we run Coach Alexa here, coach for Reading, South Oxfordshire and online. I have again been reading books that aren't strictly running related, but I guess as an occupational hazard, I always tend to read with my running coaching hat on. And the latest one is called Dopamine Nation. So this book interests me because the psychiatrist who's written it is coming at it using case studies of quite extreme addiction. So this dopamine sort of system in our brain, it's like the pleasure hormone. So it's the button that we're trying to push if, for example, we've got an opioid addiction, or one of the case studies that she uses is a type of sex addiction. So these extreme cases where people are going so much after that dopamine hit that they end up, in a quite a serious, sort of state, I guess. And needing her treatment. So case studies from some of her patients. But she uses it as a way of describing how across a lot of society these days, we find our own ways of pressing that dopamine button, that make me feel better, that pick me up, that happiness button. And that can be training. It can be a little pathway that can, when we keep pressing that button more and more often and for longer, and the more we press it, the more we need to press it for longer and do more to get the same hit, can be a pathway to exercise addiction. It can also be one of the reasons why we use our smartphone or social media too much, because every little like or click and that uncertainty about whether somebody's going to like your post or not gives you that dopamine hit. Complex relationships with food can be part of this dopamine loop as well. So it was an interesting book when I read it from a running coaching perspective because of those links into exercise addiction. It's certainly something that I see when people are kind of chasing that runner's high a little bit. Maybe the events are getting longer or more extreme or tougher because they don't get the runner's high from a 10k anymore, so they're going longer or faster or doing more. And the dangers for mind and body that come with that. And it's also interesting from the point of view of all the other stuff we kind of fill our lives with, smartphone use, for example, where we could be using that time more to actually maybe do a bit of training, or maybe more importantly, proactively resting and recovering better from training by taking some physically inactive, mentally calming rest time. And also our relationships with food, the kind of high sugar, high fat foods that give us that kind of dopamine immediate pleasure hit aren't always the best for our bodies in terms of the sport that we do or our general health. So lots of kind of tie-ins with helping to unpick unhealthy habits that we might have created with this dopamine loop, but also how to recognise them, how to get out of them. So interesting read, as I say, not entirely running related, but I think has some quite big tie-ins to our general health and well-being, and how we use our time and how we keep our brain in a good place without resorting to some of these sort of dopamine hacks that creep into modern life. Anyway, food for thought, an interesting one if you're fascinated by that topic. Happy running.